This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
The Perka, Parshas Noach. Today we're going to speak about a very interesting part of the Parsha, and that is at Chamishi, the Rebbe Shalom says that he's going to make a covenant, a bris, between himself and Noach and his descendants. And in Pasuk Yud Beis, Vayomer Elokim Zois Ois Habris Asher Ani Noisein Beini Uveinechem. This is the sign of the treaty that I place between me and you, Uvein Kol Nefesh Chaya Asher Itzchem L'Doirei Solam, and between all the living things. If you notice in Pasuk Yud Beis, the word L'Doiros is spelled Chasar. It's missing a Vav. L'Doiros should have a Vav in it, and Rashi will discuss that. And what is the bris? Es kashti nosati be'anan. My bow I placed in the cloud. V'hoisa liois bris beini uvein haaretz. Now, very interestingly, in Pasuk Yud Beis, the lashon that it uses is Zois ois habris asher ani noisein. Then I'm placing it, present tense, right now. Pasuk Yud Gimel, es kashti nosati be'anan. I have already placed. So, one question is, this bris, is it something that is occurring now, or is it something that the Rebbe Shalom has already set into place? So today's shiur is going to be about the rainbow. We're going to learn all about rainbows today. Okay? So it's not only going to be a scientific shiur, but it will also have, very important, limudim as well. Says the Ramban. We begin with the Ramban. Zois ois habris asher ani noisein. The Ramban immediately picks up on the present tense. Says Ramban, mimashma min ha'ois hazeh shalai haya keshes ba'anan b'maisa bereshis. This lashon of asher ani noisein that I'm placing right now, the word noisein is mashma. There were no rainbows when Hashem created the world. It was a new phenomenon. It was invented. It was an innovative phenomenon. Noisein. V'ata, and now, bara Hashem chadasha. Hashem is creating a new phenomenon. Lasois keshes b'shamayim b'yoyim anan, to make rainbows on cloudy days. Says Ramban, the word noisein is mashma, a new phenomenon. And the Ramban says, what is the meaning of the rainbow? For that, you have to go to the people. Ve'amru, they say. Who's the they? They, you know, they. Betam ha'ois hazeh. The reason for the sign, ki ha'keshes loy asoi sheyiu raglav lemala. Hashem did not make the bow with the feet above and the pointy and the rounded part below. In other words, Hashem, coming down from heaven, He could have made the rainbow like a U. No. And that would have indicated, Ki'ilu min hashamayim moirim bai, like Hashem shooting arrows down at us. If the bow would have been pointed down, that would indicate Hashem is, right, shooting arrows down at us, like the pasuk says in Tehillim. Vayishlach chitza vayafitzim ba'aretz. Aval asoi behepach mizeh. Hashem made it upside down. Laharos, to show shelo yoru by min hashamayim. No more arrows coming down from heaven. It's an upside down bow.
The arrows are going up to heaven.
It's like the weapon is being turned the other way. When you want to show a gesture of peace to your enemy, what do? You take your weapon and you turn it the other way. So that's what the Rebbe Shalom is doing. No more battle. The war is over. I turn my bow the other way. Plus, ba'oid she'en lekeshes yeser l'choinen chitzam alav. There's something missing on this bow. There's no string even. That indicates the weapon has been disarmed. Says Ramban, this would be the simple meaning of the bow. And from the word noisein, that would indicate that this was a new phenomenon. Says Ramban, very interestingly, despite the fact that the words of the pasuk indicate that it's a new phenomenon, however, we cannot blind ourselves to reality. And reality is that if this is a natural phenomenon, then it must have always existed. Who says this? The Greek philosophers. Oh. And as much as we don't like Greek philosophers, when they're right, they're right. And we accept the truth from whoever it is. Says Ramban, even though this is the simple meaning of the pasuk, we can't say the simple meaning. Why? Va'anachnu al karchenu namin ledivrei hayavanim. We are forced to accept the opinion of the Greek philosophers, namely, Ramban doesn't say who they are. He's referring to Aristotle, Epicurus. That, where does the rainbow come from? Shemelahat Hashemesh. Now, interestingly, the first pshat of the Ramban that the Ramban rejects that a rainbow is a new phenomenon. You know who says that? That's the opinion of the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra says, "Es kashti hine nasati ata keshes be'anan." The Ramban says that this pshat, the pshat, that the rainbow is a new phenomenon, is also shared by the Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra says rainbow is a new phenomenon. But now the Ramban is going to go with the Greek philosophers that it always existed. And by the way, the Ibn Ezra says he doesn't agree with the Greek philosophers, but the Ibn Ezra doesn't quote them as Greek philosophers. Ibn Ezra quotes a goin. Ibn Ezra says, "Ve'ein perusha kasher amar hagoin." The explanation is not like the goin says, by the way, which goin is he referring to? Not the Vilna goin. The goin is referring to Reb Sadia goin. Reb Sadia goin maintained that the keshes always existed from Maisa Bereshis. The Ibn Ezra rejects that. The Ramban is going to go with that. Why? Because we have to accept the scientific reports of the Greek philosophers. Shemei lahat hashemesh ba'avir halach. When the sun shines on moist air, yeh hakeshes b'toilada. The product, the natural scientific product, is a rainbow. Says Ramban, why do we have to believe Greek philosophers? Why do we have to believe them? We don't accept a lot of things they say. Why? Says Ramban, because every person can make their own homemade experiment. Take a glass of water, let the light shine on it. What comes out?
Rainbow.
A rainbow. A rainbow. That means the water serves as some kind of prism
Diffraction.
to diffract the rays of light into 7 different colors.
Isn't it a basic tenet of Yiddishkeit that ein chadash tachat hashem? Everything was created either.
You're right. That's true.
You can say that.
Ein chadash tachas hashemesh.
Even the were created the Neshama,
Okay, so he was
not.
It was created.
Oh, okay, so we have to deal with that also, because
he was
it happens to be in Pirkei Avos. It says that one of the 10 things that was created Erev Shabbos Ben Hashmashas was a rainbow. So then, how could the Ramban even entertain the possibility that it was a new phenomenon? We have a tradition that it was created already with Maisa Bereshis.
He was matman it.
Right. So we'll see. Rashi in Pirkei Avos says it just means Hashem created it. He created it, but He did not establish it yet. He didn't bring it out into the world until. So Rashi actually also goes with the original Pshat of the Ramban, that it was a new phenomenon. It had already been created beforehand, but had not been brought out into the world yet. Okay, but now the Ramban is saying, why do we have to accept the Greek philosophers? Kiba kli mayim lifnei hashemesh yireh kamara hakeshes. Right? Everybody knows if you have a nice chandelier with those fake glass, right? It makes these little rainbows all over the ceiling. Says Ramban, and you have to look even more carefully. Why? Because in Pasuk Yud Beis it says Zois oisabres asher ani noisein. But in Pasuk Yud Gimel it says Es kashti nasati. So now we have a stira. Is it noisein or is it nasati? If you actually look carefully in the language of the pasuk, you'll understand what I'm telling you. Because yes, it says Zois oisabres asher ani noisein. But Omar Es kashti nasati be'anan. V'loy Omar ani noisein be'anan. Says Ramban, the ois is now. But the natural phenomenon always existed. In other words, there was always such a natural phenomenon. But until now, the natural phenomenon never served as any kind of testimony. Now the Rebbeinu Shalom says, this natural phenomenon that always existed, from here on, the natural phenomenon should serve as an eidos, should serve as a testimony that of our treaty between me and you. So in terms of the ois is noisein. In terms of the phenomenon is nasati. Says Ramban, okay. Also the word kashti, my bow. What do you mean my bow? If Hashem just created it, He would not refer to it as my bow. My bow implies something I always had, something that always existed. Okay? Therefore, says Ramban, we explain the pasuk the following way. Not like the Ibn Ezra, not like the simple pshat, but rather like the Greek philosophers, and like Rav Sadia Gaon, The bow that I put in the cloud, miyoim habriya, from day one, tiya min hayoim hazev, from here on it should be la'ois beris beini uveinechem shekozman she'erena. Whenever I see it, azkir, I will mention ki bris shalom beini. I will remember that there's a bris. Okay, so far we have two pshatim. We have the pshat of the Ibn Ezra, that it was a new phenomenon. We have the pshat, the Ramban's first Mishkal Rishon, that it was a new phenomenon. And then what the Ramban concludes, and the Rav Sadia going, that it always existed, but only now it became a testimonial. Okay. Comes the Maharal. Maharal writes in the Gur Aryeh on this concept that it says L'doirois oilam. The word L'doirois is spelled without a vav. And Rashi points out, look at number 4. Rashi says, why does it say L'doirois oilam without a vav? It says Rashi, not every generation had rainbows. There were certain generations without rainbows. It says Rashi, Nechtav chaser, sheyesh darish salai hutzruchu la'ois. Why? L'fi shetzadikim gemurim hayu. What's the ois? The ois is Hashem says, I will not destroy them. Don't worry. As bad as you are, I will not destroy you. That type of message is only needed if people are so bad that they warrant to be destroyed, and Hashem has to say, don't worry, we have a deal, I'm not going to destroy you. But a generation that they're tzaddikim gemurim, they don't need the message of the rainbow. Well, for example, which generations? Kamoi doiroi shel Chizkiyahu. For example, the generation of Chizkiyahu, Melech Yehuda, the doiroi shel Reb Shimon ben Yochai, and the generation of Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Says Maharal that those Rishonim that say, and those scientists that say, that the rainbow is a natural phenomenon, and therefore it always existed, they're making a big mistake. Why is that? Because yes, it's a natural phenomenon, but what produces the natural phenomenon? The sun.
The intensity of the sun. The
way the sun shines on the water is what produces the imagery of a rainbow. But it says that Maharal, Aval ein zakasha. Koidem hamabel loy hoya koyach belad hashemesh lifal hakeshes. Before the mabel, the sun did not have the capacity to create a rainbow. You know why a mabel could come? Because the sun was not strong enough to cause the water to evaporate. That's why, you want to know why there was no mabel? The sun used to be weaker. The sun used to be not as strong. That's where a mabel came from. The sun did not have the capacity to evaporate so much water. And therefore, guess what? Because the sun did not have that capacity, it also didn't have the capacity to produce a rainbow. After the mabel, Yivon Shem intensified the sun now, as much as it rains, eventually the water evaporates, and this type of sun could also produce a rainbow. Aval achar hamabel, shekol kach goiver halad shel hashemesh, after the mabel, that the sun became so powerful, ve'in tzarich loymar, it goes without saying, ki hashemesh ba'atzmai kibla hishtanos, that qualitatively, even if it didn't become stronger, it became different. So maybe this difference that the sun now has, that is what is able to produce the rainbow. So in other words, the Maharal disagrees with the Ramban. The Ramban says, look, it's a natural phenomenon. Ask the Greek scientists, conduct your own science experiment. You go like this, you put this by the light, you're going to produce a rainbow. Says the Maharal, not true. Says Maharal, the rainbow is only a result of the new sun. Before the mabel, the sun was not strong. That's why you had a mabel. After the mabel, the sun became different, and now you could produce a rainbow. Okay.
Hashem created two suns?
No. Hashem, yeah. He revved up the sun. He fueled up the sun. Now, I want to point out something very interesting, a little bit of a tangent over here. Rashi says in the generation of Chizkiyahu HaMelech, the world did not need a rainbow. So I want to bring to your attention something fascinating that the Netziv talks about in his Hakdama to the Shiltis. By the way, it's very interesting. The Shiltis was really a great invention. Before the Shiltis, there was no such thing as Rishonim writing halacha on Chumash. You had Mefarshim on Chumash, and you had halachos keseder. But to have halachos in the order of the Parshas did not exist. After the Shiltis, it became very popular. But the Shiltis was the one who created it. Why? If you look in the Meiri writes in Sakdam Tbergavis, the Shultas had a son who he wasn't learning. The son was not learning B'chlal. And he was trying to come up with a new educational methodology for his son. So he wrote the Shultas. Whatever works, right? Whatever works. No, we don't do things this way. We do. We do the things that work. If it doesn't work, you try something else. We didn't do it. The Messiah is you do what works, not just what was. Also, we have a Messiah to do what's effective. Okay. Anyway, the Netziv writes in this is number 11. Chizkiyahu HaMelech, the Gemara says in Sechta Sanhedrin, he took a sword and he stuck the sword in the entrance of the Beis Medrash, and he said, "Kol mi she'enoi oisek b'Torah yidaker b'cherev." Whoever doesn't learn, I'm going to kill you. Right? Where's the pamphlet for Agra the right? Here. Here's here night yeshiva, excellent shiurim. It probably says good food. Right? No. In Chizkiyahu, come to the kollel, otherwise we're going to slice your head off. That was the motto.
Good.
Effective.
Right?
Very good.
You get these, train calls. Come for an excellent shiur tonight if you know what's good for you, right? That's what the motto of Chizkiyahu HaMelech was. So the Netziv asks, sounds good. There's one problem. Learning Torah is very important, but there's no chiyuv misa for somebody who doesn't learn. And there is nobody in the world who could institute a chiyuv misa for not learning. I mean, Talmud Torah keneged kulam. We learn this Gemara so many times. It sounds good. Kol mi she'eino osek b'Torah yidaker b'cherev. How could you establish such a halacha? Chizkiyahu HaMelech is a great man, but right? The Gemara says, and Chizkiyahu in his time, it wasn't just that they weren't learning; they were learning. Chizkiyahu wanted to expand learning. Lahagdol Torah la'adira, like the Gemara says, they checked Midan Ba'ad Beersheva. They didn't find one Amma Oretz. They checked from Gavas till Anti Paris. They didn't find one kid or one Ish Ve'isha who wasn't Baki B'Hilchos Tumah Tara. Says in the Tzibah, a mafli heich matzah Chizkiyahu leiv ligzer kazoi shemisha eno esuk b'Torah yidaker b'cherev. Where did he get such a plan from? And the Tzibah says an unbelievable thing. Unbelievable. We know Chizkiyahu lived in the times of Sancheirav, and Sancheirav was advancing, and you know what Sancheirav did to the world? He destroyed every country he came into contact with. Bas Sancheirav ubilbel Kol ha'umais, to the point where after Sancheirav you could marry a Moavi, because chances are they're not from Moav. He put all the Moavim in Japan. He put all the Ammonim in Italy. He put all the Edomim. He put all the Mitzrim. You could marry anyone. Before Sancheirav you couldn't marry certain people. Lo Yavei Ammoni Moavi Mitzri Edomi, and after Sancheirav there's no such thing. Kol Bato Baroiv. So Chizkiyahu was very afraid. So what is Chizkiyahu going to do? Get a good Air Force. What's he going to do? Get good surveillance cameras. He's going to upgrade his army. Doesn't work. We know throughout history, it says in it said, Iker Melchamtan Shel Yisrael hu b'kol Torah. The Iker Melchama of Klal Yisrael is b'kol Torah, like the Gemara says in Makkos. Oyim dois hayu ragleinu v'sharayach Yushalayim. The Gemara darshans. What caused us that our feet were standing in Yerushalayim? If you're in Yerushalayim and we're secure, why? V'sharayach Yerushalayim. It's because of the gates of Torah of Yerushalayim. Our tradition is we don't win war without Kol Torah, without leaving out Torah. It says in Netziv, Ula Oilam Zoisal Yisrael. This was historically the way Jews went to war. Listen to this. B'shah shal yoytzim l'mochama. Forget the army. They would send out Loimdei Torah to learn on the battlefield. Not just back in the Beis Medrash. The way they would go to war was they would send out Loimdei Torah to go learn against the enemy. He brings down, he says, Ula Oilam Zoisal Yisrael. This was historically the way we did war. Shal yoytzin l'machal hamiyachtim anoshim mukhsharim l'Torah u'l'tfila sheyatsu im haloichmen. They would accompany the army. La'oyale asada b'sham shinenu cherev l'shayim b'kol Torah. He brings many rayas. Yeshua ben Nun, when he's about to go war, vayolan b'soicha imek. And this says, this is what it means. Smach zvulun b'tzeisecha. You know why Zvulun, when they go out to war, should be happy and should be confident? Because v'yisachar b'ayalecha. So it says in Netziv, at the end of the piece, the the decree of Chizkiyahu, the institution of Chizkiyahu, this methodology of Kol Mi She'eno Elohim Torah Yidaka B'Cherev, it was not a religious institution. It was in order to win the war. It was Midin Milchama. And we know a king has a right to decree on anybody, could draft anybody. The king has full authority to control people in terms of the army. And this is the only way to win a war. To tell people, get out of your house and go learn, otherwise we're going to kill you. So who gave you right? What religion is this? No, I'm the Melech. You're the Melech. What do you have to... You could tell me to pick up a spear. You could tell me to pick up a gun. You could tell me to pick up a Gemara. No! That's your gun! That's how you fight the war. There was meat says in the Tziv, Im Kain Shal Yitzorech HaMelchama, Haya Efshar Ligzar Al Zeh, K'may She'efshar LaMelech Ligzar Al Kol Amoy Litol Cherev. Just like a king could say, get out of your house, I'm not in the mood of fighting the war. You better bet you're going to be in the mood, the king says, otherwise I'm going to kill you. Same way the king could threaten someone with their life to fight in the war, the king could threaten someone with their life to learn Torah. That's how they used to fight. It's not just nowadays. That's historically, traditionally, that's the way they fought. Okay.
You have to get the mirror guys to go up to Gaza.
This is a good one, right?
You have to start the mirror yeshiva in their Gaza now.
Okay, so this is, you want to know why in the times of Chizkiyahu HaMelech do they not need the rainbow? There was a generation, Shekulam Zakai. Okay, let's talk briefly about another generation that did not need a rainbow. The Gemara in Ksubas says, on your sheet it says, Samach Zayin Amud Beis, Ayin Zayin Amud Beis. Okay, you change the number 5. The Gemara talks about a certain disease. We're up to number 5. The Gemara talks about a certain disease. It's called Balei Rasan, a very terrible disease. The disease made people's nose run and bodily fluids leak out of their body. It was a very unpleasant, unseemly disease. And it was very contagious, to the point where Rabbi Yochanan said, be very careful from these chevra. The Gemara says, Reb Zera would not sit in their wind. Anywhere where they would be in the same wind shot, Reb Zera would not even be in their wind space so that the wind should not blow the germs. Reb Eliezer would not go in the same house. Reb Ami and Reb Asi would not eat in their neighborhood. They would not eat an egg in their neighborhood. Rabbi Shiur ben Levi, he would take his hand, put them around his back, and he would learn with them. Because he said, Ayoles ahavim v'yalaschem, that if the Torah gives someone who's uncharming charm, then certainly it will protect somebody from any kind of disease. So in Shamayim they were very pleased with Rabbi Shiur ben Levi, to the point where, when Rabbi Shiur ben Levi's time came, they sent a message to the Malach HaMaves, do whatever he wants. So the Malach HaMaves comes, appears to Rabbi Shiur ben Levi, and Rabbi Shiur ben Levi says, do me a favor. Before I go to El Mabah, you want to show me where I'm going to sit. Is it in the Mizrach? Is it all the way in the back? Is it near the door? Where am I going to sit in El Mabah? Luxury box, where is it? Amar Yitzhar said, fine, I'll give you that. So Rabbi Shiur ben Levi was very strong. He said, but Yitzhara, I'm very scared of you. Would you mind giving me your sword so that I would feel more comfortable while we're going? I'm afraid you might stab me before I get there. So he gave it to him. So now Rabbi Shiur ben Levi says, I can't see over the fence. Where am I sitting? He said, you're sitting in the front row. I want to see it. So Yitzhara picks him up to take a peek. He takes one look down. He jumps in. He's like one of the only people. He got in alive. He made it to Olam Haba alive. He never died. He's standing there. He's still wearing his bekisha. He's still wearing his shtreimel. He's still alive. Right? Fine. So, and then he gets in there, and he takes a shvua. I'm never coming out. He gets it. So the Malach HaMaves looks at Rabbi and he says, now what? So Hashem said, well, if he ever was mater a shvua, then we'll be mater it. If he was never mater a shvua, we're not going to be mater it. He was never mater a shvua. So Rabbi said, then you have to let him stay. The Malach HaMaves says, yeah, but now what? What's my job? I'm a Malach HaMaves. I don't have a sword. So Hashem said, you got to give him the sword back. He needs it for other people. You got to give him the sword back. So the Baskol came out. Fine. Anyway, Eliyahu Hanavi starts announcing, clear out a path. Yeshua ben Levi is coming. He meets Reb Shimon bar Yochai, and Reb Shimon bar Yochai was sitting on golden chairs, and he says, are you Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi? He said, yeah, that's me. He said, you sure? Yeah. Reb Shimon bar Yochai says, were there rainbows while you were alive? Nirasa keshes biyamecha. Amar Lehein, there were rainbows. So Shimon says, nah, if there were rainbows when you were alive, you can't be the Rabbi Shiur ben Levi that Eliyahu. It's impossible. If Eliyahu is saying clear out path for Rabbi Shiur ben Levi, you can't be him. If there were rainbows when you were alive, we know somebody of the stature of Rabbi Shiur ben Levi, there would not need to be rainbows when he was alive. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shiur ben Levi lied. Really, there were no rainbows. So why did he say there were rainbows? Elasavar la'achzik tivusa lenafshai. He didn't want to take credit. He didn't want to make it like he's such a big tzaddik, so therefore he said there were rainbows, but really there were no rainbows. So we're going to have to deal with the question that you can't lie. Right? It's one of the 613 mitzvahs. You can't lie. You know, you take your kids to the amusement park and it says under 12 is less money, and the kid is 19. You can't say, well, he just looks older than his age. It's lying, right? It's a lie. Okay,
There's some rationalization.
What especially we're going to see, this is the Olam HaEmes. In the Olam HaEmes, you have to be very careful not to lie. There's no sheker. Doiver shkarim lo yikon k'neged, it's Olam HaEmes. How could he say there were rainbows? We'll get to that. Let's come back to so far we have two opinions. We have the opinion of the Ramban that the rainbow is a natural phenomenon that always existed. It's just that after the Mabul, the natural phenomenon that always existed served as an edus. And you have the opinion of the Ibn Ezra that was a new phenomenon. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, one of the 10 things that was created Erev Shabbos, Bein Hashmashos, is the rainbow. You ever wonder why, like 10 minutes before Shabbos, all of a sudden you have a million things to do? All of a sudden you have to chop this, that. All of a sudden, in 10 minutes before candlelighting, you do more in those 10 minutes than you do the whole week. Why? It's in the Bria. It's already licked in the Bria. Hashem created this on the first day. And all of a sudden, Bein Hashmos is Friday, He created more than He did the whole week. That's how the world is set up. Okay. Right? So, but this implies not like the Ibn Ezra. This implies the rainbow was created Bein Hashmashos on Friday, not after the Mabul. This implies it was an old phenomenon. So Rashi on Pirkei Avos says, "V'hakeshes hanira be'anan b'yom hageshem afal pi shloi nira ad yemei Noach." It was not seen until Noach came to the scene. But noitzer v'omer hayomei koydem. It was already created beforehand. Okay. Now we have to deal with the following question. If, as the Ramban is saying, that a rainbow is a natural phenomenon, then how is it possible there were no rainbows in the generation of Chizkiyahu and the generation of Shimon bar Yochai? And why? And what would have been so bad if there was a rainbow? After all, it's just a natural phenomenon that occurs when the sun shines on the moist clouds. I mean, according to the Ibn Ezra, that it's actually a new phenomenon that was created miraculously. So I understand. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. But if it's a natural phenomenon, I mean, the sun rose every day, but in the times of Shimon bar Yochai, it rained. All the natural phenomenon existed. Rav Shiur ben Levi, Rav Shimon bar Yochai, Chizkiyahu. If it's just a natural phenomenon, then what would have been so terrible if it appeared in the times of Rav Shimon bar Yochai? That's the question of the Shlach HaKadosh. In a footnote on this week's Parsha, he says, "Ulakulu is percha." According to every opinion that we saw so far, there's a big question. That which mehada amru Rabbi Seinazal shabadoyroi shel Chizkiyahu, then the generation of Chizkiyahu v'shal Rav Shimon bar Yochai lo nirasa keshes, that there was no rainbow. L'fi divrei Amai griyusa hayolahem im nira keshes. What would have been so terrible if they saw a rainbow? It's only a natural phenomenon. Okay. So we're going to give right now two answers. We'll see more soon. First answer is given by a great rabbi by the name of Rabbeinu Moshe Isserles. Who's that? The Rama. The Rama wrote a sefer called TorahAnytime, sefer of Kabbalah, philosophy. The Rama wrote a sefer TorahAnytime. Says a shla in the name of the Rama. Yes, it's a natural phenomenon. But that natural phenomenon only exists if certain conditions are met. For example, you need the sun to shine and you need it to be rainy. But what if Hashem makes it that it doesn't rain during the day? It only rains at night. Then you're not going to see a rainbow. So, says the Rama, yes, rainbow is a natural phenomenon. But in the generation of Shimon Yochai, and the generation of Yeshua ben Levi, and the generation of Chizkiyahu, it only rained at night. It only rained at night. Like the Gemara says, that what's Gishmei Bracha? To when it rains, when people are sleeping. Friday night is Gishmei Bracha. Yeah, but if it only rains Friday night, then they're not going to see any rainbows. Exactly. Sometimes Rav Shimon Yochai, you only had Gishmei Bracha. That's why Rav Shimon Yochai said, Niras HaKeshes biyamecha. Was the rainbow seen in your days, meaning daytimes? Yes, it's a natural phenomenon. But the point is, Rebbeinu Shem could orchestrate the natural phenomenon that the conditions will not come about to produce the natural phenomenon. So therefore, just because you could predict, if it's raining now on a sunny day, there's going to be a rain. Yeah, but the Rebbeinu Shem could also predict and make it that these conditions are not going to be in existence. Okay? He said, biyamecha, where the rain. Okay? So that is the first explanation. Despite in other words, it's not a rainbow is not miraculous. A rainbow is a natural phenomenon, but the Rebbeinu Shem could make sure the conditions to create it are not. But then the Shlosh says, I'm going to tell you a deeper answer. The Gemara says in Masechta Sukkah, there are 4 averos that cause solar eclipse. If an Av Bezdin dies and people don't eulogize him properly, says the Shlosh, what are you talking about? There are 4 averos that cause a solar eclipse? I have a chart at home that says exactly when the solar and lunar eclipses will be. I mean, they're predictable. You're telling me, so now we can start predicting when people are going to sin? I mean, if an eclipse was something that, if you want to say rain only comes or rain is only withheld, rain you can't predict. But an eclipse, you have a chart now when all the eclipses will be for the next. In fact, there's a story that's printed in the Hakdama to the Sefer HaYuchsin Haggadah, Rabbi Avram Zakuto. Amazing story. Mamish Hashgacha Pratis. You ready for this? What's today?
Monday.
No? Nobody knows what today is? Columbus Day. Columbus Day. So Rabbi Avram Zakuto writes, by the way, you should know, you could go to a museum in Spain, and the Sefer HaYuchsin appears with the Haggais of Christopher Columbus. Yeah? The maritime charts, Rabbi Avram Zakuto, one of the old-time great Gedolim, he wrote maritime charts that all the sailors who discovered the New World used. I think he invented the astrolabe as well, Rabbi Avram Zakuto.
What?
Astrolabe.
It's
a maritime instrument.
Right, these are the stars, yes.
Rabbi Avram Zakuto had charts of all the eclipses. In fact, you could go to a museum today. Christopher Columbus wrote Haggais on one of the works of Rabbi Avram Zakuto. Christopher Columbus, he came to some country that he discovered, and he was captured by Indians. It's a Ma'aseh Shahaya. It's recorded in the Sefer of Avram Zakuto. He was captured by Indians, and they were going to eat him. They put him in a pot. And Christopher Columbus said, it's a printer, I could show you. Christopher Columbus, I once had it in the Marmakoymos even. Christopher Columbus said, if you don't let me free, I'm going to blot out the light of the moon. Because he knew, based on the charts of Avram Zakuto, when the next lunar eclipse would be. And he did, and in like a day and a half, the moon disappeared, and they thought he was a god, and they let him free. And Christopher Columbus attributes his salvation to Avram Zakuto. So the Shla is asking, that how could the Gemara say that there are 4 averos that cause an eclipse? An eclipse is a predictable thing. It's set. There are 4 mitzvahs that cause the sun to rise. The sun rises, the sun sets. It's not dependent on anything. How could you say a solar eclipse, a lunar eclipse is dependent on a chet? The Shla, let me tell you a very deep idea. There's an idea that ki yipoel hanoifel mimenu. That if somebody falls off the roof, the Torah says this guy was destined to fall off the roof. Misheshes me'bereshis. Just megalgal and chayv al yedei chayav. The Rebbeinu Shem brings it about through this guy who did Avera. In other words, Hashem knew that on this and this date, Pliny Almani is going to fall off a roof. But all the Rebbeinu Shem needs is a shliach to make sure that he's the instrument through which this guy falls off the roof. We need one Avarian who doesn't put the fence on his roof to be the instrument through which this guy falls off the roof. So therefore, says the Shla, eclipse will happen whether it's going to happen no matter what. It's already predicted beforehand. It's already set. You want to know about a rainbow? A rainbow is a natural phenomenon. But the Ribono Shel Olam, who's Magid Me'areishas Achras, the Ribono Shel Olam who knows from beforehand the Maisim of Bnei Adam, he knows exactly when people will be Chaytei. So you say, if Hashem knows when you'll be Chaytei, then the person doesn't have free choice? That's the age-old question. How do you reconcile Yediyah and Bechira? But the Ribono Shel Olam knows when somebody will sin, in what generation. And therefore the Ribono Shel Olam has already pre-programmed that based on his knowledge of when people will sin, that's when there will be an eclipse. So you say, does that mean people have to sin every this amount of years? No. The Ribono Shel Olam knew when people would sin, and he already pre-programmed the eclipse at that exact moment. Same thing with the rainbow. You'll ask, if a rainbow is a natural phenomenon, if it's a natural phenomenon, how could it be that there were no rainbows in the generation of Chizkiyahu and Rav Shimon Bar Yochai? The answer is, the Ribono Shel Olam knew that in the generation of Chizkiyahu and the generation of Shimon Bar Yochai and the generation of Shimon Levi, they would be such tzaddikim, they wouldn't need a rainbow, and therefore he made it that those natural phenomena would not be during those generations. So how's that possible? It's not dependent on action. The Ribono Shel Olam knew when those natural phenomena would exist, and therefore he programmed it that it should only be at times that people do Averos. But then Hashem knows when people are going to do Averos. He does. But then the person is mukhrach to do an Avera. He's not. How do you explain that? Ask Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, right? Hakol tzafoi v'harishus netna. Everything is foreseen, and yet people still have free choice. Okay, that's another answer to the question. We'll see more. Okay, let's move on.
This also answers the question about the truth of the emes, because in the answer called Yomecho,
yeah,
he said he didn't say a lie.
Why? He said there were rainbows.
He said there were rainbows. They came at night.
Oh, okay, that's another answer. Yeah. That's the first thing, right? That's okay.
Or they were the cloudy day, but you didn't see it. So because the sun was covered, you didn't see it.
Okay, let's see a few halachos about the rainbow. Okay, it's a good bracha to have memorized. Shulchan Aruch says in Sun Reish Chav Tes, number 12. Haroya keshes, if you see a rainbow, Omer, Baruch Ata Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam. Right, that doesn't mean you say Ba'i Ima. No, it's Baruch Ata Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam. Zoicher habris, Nemon bevrisai, V'kayam b'ma'amarai. Now our minhag is like, I believe the Rambam, not Nemon, but V'ne'eman. So it's Zoicher habris, V'ne'eman bevrisai, V'kayim b'ma'amarai. V'asar l'staka b'y b'yosher. You're not allowed to gaze too much at a rainbow. Why not? Another interesting halacha. Chayyim writes, then parentheses, he found in a sefer, he forgets which sefer, that if you see a rainbow, you're not allowed to tell somebody about it. Did you see this rainbow? Look! You can't say anything. You see a rainbow, you tell somebody, you're a Baal Lashon Hara. You're Motziyei Diba. You don't tell anybody. Why? Moitzi Diba. We'll see. What does that mean? Also, the Gemara says in Masechet Chagiga Daf Tezayin, there are three things that if you gaze at, your eyes dim. Number one, a rainbow. You can't stare at a rainbow. Number two, the Gadol Hadar, the Nasi. Number three, the Kaihanim. Why, if you gaze at the rainbow, does it cause your eyes to dim? It's a pasuk in Chicheskel. It's in number 20. Kemarei hakeshes asher yeh be'anon b'yom hageshem. Like the image of the rainbow that will be in the cloud on a rainy day. Kain marei hanoigah saviv. Hu marei demus kvod Hashem. Somehow the rainbow is, in some level, the image of Hashem. Somehow the rainbow represents the light of Hashem. And therefore you should not gaze at the rainbow too much. Now, interesting, Mishnah Brura also agrees with the Chai Adam that if somebody sees a rainbow, it's not kedai to tell another person about it. Mishnah Brura says if you see a rainbow again within 30 days, you make another bracha.
Why is it said Motzi Diba?
You're a Baal Lashon Hara.
You know, it's
a bad thing. You're telling your friend that the world are a bunch of Risham and Hashem had to make a rainbow.
Hashem remembers the bris that he made with us.
I know. Why is he remembering a bris? Because everybody's a bunch of bums. That's what he says. I don't know. Okay.
It's a terrible Rishon.
Now, the Bir Halach has a very interesting suffix. Do you have to see the entire rainbow? Or do you only have to see a little piece? Now, if you have to see the entire rainbow, I don't think anyone will ever be able to make a bracha on a rainbow. Because I don't think you ever see the entire rainbow. The Bir Halacha says he's masupik. Do you need to see a semicircle or even a little bit? Bottom line is, he doesn't say. So Safek bracha is l'kula. So according to the Mishnah Berurah, according to Bir Halacha, if you don't see the whole rainbow, you don't make a bracha. However, in the Sefer V'zois HaBracha, he does bring those who argue on the Chayyadim, and they say they don't understand why you can't tell somebody about a rainbow. And he brings down a suffix. Let's say you're not going to tell someone about the rainbow. Could you text? Or could you? Hey.
It's in dirshu.
Right? Could you? Right? Could you motion it? Charade it?
No,
okay. But then the Sefer V'zois HaBracha is a very interesting thing. That this suffix of the Bir Halacha, do you need to see a little piece or you have to see the whole circle? It's not mamish the whole circle. In other words, nobody says you have to see mamish the whole. Otherwise, nobody ever made a bracha on a rainbow. Maybe only Noach. Maybe Noach was the only one who ever made a bracha on the rainbow. It means you see, a ruba deruba of it. If you're missing a little bit, it's also okay. The shah is, you need to see what looks like a semicircle or even a piece. Okay. So now we come to Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, who certainly is going to have an innovative perspective on the rainbow. And Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz is picking up on the hesped that David HaMelech gave on Shaul and Yonasan. He said, L'lamed b'nei Yehuda kashes, to teach the sons of Yehuda warfare. But the word that's used is keshes. Says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, how could Rabbi Shua ben Levi lie? Reb Shimon, and to all people, Reb Shimon bar Yochai. I mean, if the Arizal could look at your forehead and see every single Avera he ever did, you don't think Reb Shimon bar Yochai could have seen right? How could he lie? And in the Olam HaEmes, Doiver Shkam Lo Yikan Le'Ganeinov. In the Olam HaEmes, he's going to lie. Says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, a major chiddush. I'm not sure how it fits into any of the things that we said today, except for answering the Gemara in Ksubis. And that is, says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, there are two kinds of rainbows. There's the kind of rainbow when you take your cup, your crystal cup, and you put it by the light, and it makes rainbows. That rainbow always existed. It's a natural phenomenon. It has nothing to do with what the Rebbeinu Shalom told Noach. There's a second kind of rainbow, which Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz says from the Zohar HaKadosh is completely techelas, blue. And techelas indicates tichla, complete destruction, kliya. But it also could mean tachlis, having a future. This rainbow, this blue rainbow, this tchelas rainbow, that was the supernatural rainbow that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave Noach as an ois bris that he would not destroy the world. Not the kind of rainbow that you find a pot of gold on the end of the rainbow. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a special rainbow. We're talking about a bluish techelas rainbow, which is supernatural, was b'derech nes, that the Rebbeinu Shalom created as a special bris. Rav Shimon bar Yochai said, hey, are you Rav Shua ben Levi? He said, yeah. Were there rainbows while you were alive? He said, of course. He wasn't lying. Of course there were rainbows. The natural phenomenon that has nothing to do with people's actions. It has nothing to do with a covenant between Hashem and the world. It's just, there's sun, there's clouds, there's rain, there's rainbows. He wasn't lying. He was just not reporting all the facts. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai meant was, did you see the supernatural rainbow? Those, they did not exist in the time of Rabbi Shimon ben Levi. But he didn't want to take credit for that, so he said, yes, the regular, ordinary rainbows did exist. Says David HaMelech in his hesped for Shaul and Yonasan. Shaul and Yonasan were such big tzaddikim that when they were alive, the only kinds of rainbows that existed were the natural phenomenon. And you didn't need anyone to teach us the difference between the regular rainbows and the special rainbows. But now that Shaul and Yonasan have died, L'lame b'nei Yehuda keshes, we need someone to come and teach us how to differentiate between supernatural rainbows and natural rainbows, between the rainbows that always existed and the supernatural rainbows that represent the bris between Rebbeinu Shalom and Klal Yisrael. Now, I don't understand many things with this. First of all, if that's the case, why do you need someone to differentiate? I thought these supernatural rainbows were blue. I thought they were tchelas. Also, why do we make a bracha when we see a natural rainbow? If this is not the rainbow that has anything to do with the bris between the Rebbeinu Shalom and Noach, the rainbow that has to do with the bris is this second kind of rainbow that Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz brings from the Zohar, which is only that is indicative of the bris between the Rebbeinu Shalom and Klal.
It's a zecher.
Maybe, I guess you have to say such a thing. Somehow it's a semblance of it, but it might not be the very rainbow that the Rebbeinu Shalom had given over to Noach. Okay.
That way, since why you get that one you can't see, you can't tell somebody about. That's
right.
Regular rainbows you can talk about. It's not a big deal. Yeah, that's a natural phenomenon.
Right. Okay. So Rabbi say, now let's get a little bit deeper. Let's take a look at the words of the Malbim. Take a look at number 19. The Malbim also is trying to explain how it is that there were no rainbows before the Mabul, and after the Mabul there were rainbows. How would the Mabul affect the natural phenomenon of the rainbow? Also, why did the Rebbeinu Shalom choose the rainbow as a sign that he won't destroy the world? I mean, if the Rebbeinu Shalom just destroyed the world, does that make you feel comfortable when you see a rainbow? Is that going to do it for you? Imagine if, like 100 years ago, the whole world was destroyed, and now all of a sudden the skies are turning black. Now the rainbow is going to make you feel comfortable. Like, how does the rainbow comfort mankind? The Malbim says an amazing thing, unbelievable. Only the Malbim could come up with it. The Malbim said, in order for a rainbow to exist, you need two conditions. Condition number one is the clouds cannot be covering the entire horizon. If the clouds fill up the whole horizon, and there's nowhere for the sun to come through and penetrate through, then you don't have a condition to make a rainbow. You need the sun to... So basically you need one half of the sky open for the sun to come through, and one half of the sky to be full of clouds. But if the whole horizon, if the whole oifek is full of clouds, you don't have the conditions necessary to produce a rainbow. And number two, the clouds cannot be so black and dark and thick and physical. If the clouds are so black, then the sun cannot even shine through it, cannot refract through the clouds, and cannot pick up the moisture of the clouds to produce the color of the rainbow. The clouds have to be somewhat light. These are the two conditions needed to make a rainbow. Number one, you need the sky to be somewhat open. Number two, you need the clouds to be not completely dark and black. Says the Malbim, before the Mabul, the way rain would work is it would rain once every 40 years. You hear this? In the times before the Mabul, basically what would happen would be the air would, the water vapor would evaporate and come up and produce clouds, and the clouds would start off gray and grayer and grayer and blacker and blacker. It looked like, fog. It looked like the smoke from the steel mills. It looked like it would be black and thick and dark, and the whole horizon would be full of these clouds. And after 40 years, Mabul. That was the cycle before the Mabul. That slowly, the sky would build up. The clouds would cluster. The clouds would condense. But so dark and so black and so thick that the whole horizon filled up with clouds. And there were no rainbows. First of all, the sun did not shine through at all. It wasn't like the horizon was somewhat open. And number two, the clouds were too black to pick up the rays of light of the sun. But after the Mabul, the Rebbeinu Shalom made two things. He made two changes. Change number one is he did not let the clouds build up so much. He didn't let the clouds become so black. He would have it rain every couple weeks. So at worst, the sky got a little dark. But it wouldn't look like Soyhu Vavayu V'choshech al Pnei Sahim. So therefore, if the clouds were never so black, it allows for the possibility of a rainbow. And also, Rebbeinu Shalom did not really allow the sky to fill up with clouds. He always made it that there was some space for the sun to shine through. Says the Malbim, why did Hashem make that after the Malbim? Says the Malbim, the condition of the sky is indicative of the condition of mankind. Listen very carefully. Says the Malbim, after the Mabul, Hashem changed the reality of man. Just like before the Chet of the Eitz Hadas, Adam HaRishon, what was Adam HaRishon? He was Karov Lamalach. He was a spiritual being. He had a body, but his body was divine. His body emanated light. His body, the Neshama, refracted through the body. The body itself was holy. And after eating from the Eitz Hadas, the body became Megusham. The body became physical. The whole life became Geshem, became physical. Says the Malbim, to the point where man became corrupt. Right? Because of the physicality of man, man became very corrupt. So Rebbe Shalom says, after the Mabul, I'm going to change man back, not to the way it was before the Chet, but I'm going to infuse man with extra ruchnias. The Neshama will have more dominion over the Guf. Not to the extent of Adam Rishon Kodem Lachet, but the body will not be as physical as it was before the Mabul. The body will be influenced more by the Neshama. In other words, Rebbe Shalom is tweaking the Bria. He created Adam Rishon kemat doime to him. It was Yitzir Kapav Shal Hashem. Then Adam Rishon ate from the Eitz Hadas and he became Ki Hishchas Kol Basar. Now the Rebbe Shalom is bringing man back a little bit to the way things were before the Chet. Listen very carefully. In the times of the Mabul, you know why the sky became filled with such black, dark, physical clouds? Because that was reflective of Adam. Man became very physical, very gross, very megusham, gas. Says Rebbe Shalom, we need to temper that a little bit. And the symbol that I'm making man a little bit more dark, a little bit more refined, less megusham, is the clouds are going to be different. Now the clouds are not going to be so black. Now the clouds will be a little bit grayer. The clouds are not going to build up so physical like they did before. Now the clouds are not going to fill up the whole horizon. Now you'll be able to see the rainbow. The rainbow is not some kind of just treaty. It's not just an olive branch. The rainbow represents the changed state of man. The existence of a rainbow represents the fact that man is not now like a black, dark, thick, physical, gross cloud. Man is now a little bit more refined, and that's indicated by the rainbow. The rainbow is not just a symbol. A rainbow is a barometer to man of man's state, man's station. Man has become a little bit more dark and less megusham. This is how the Malbim explains the concept of the keshes in the Shamayim. It wasn't just the physical phenomenon changed, but the physical phenomenon was reflective. I want to read to you inside. If you look in number 19, the first word on the line is hakeshes, about halfway down on the right-hand side. U'kafi choizek teva ha'anonim, according to the strength of the clouds, kein ho'ychoizek gasus ha'aretz v'chamrusa. That was the strength of the physicality of the earth. Ad ki gavar ha'choymer ma'oit, to the point where physicality became very strong. V'hayu ha'anoshim atzumin, that's why you had giants and warriors. Giboirei koyach, they were immersed, betayvos uv'chamriyos, they were immersed in desire. Vayashchisu as darkam al haaretz. Aval acharei hamabul, nishtana teva haaretz. The nature of the earth changed. V'nechlash koyach gasus v'chamrusa. And the physicality lessened. To the point where now that was reflected by the clouds weren't so thick. They didn't fill up the whole shamayim. And he says, V'chein hochlash koyach hagufim. The body was weakened. The body didn't live as long. You say, why didn't the body live as long? Why is Rebbe Shalom punishing man? It wasn't a punishment. The fact that the body lived 1,000 years meant the body was so powerful and strong that it was able to live so long. The problem was it was existing too much force against the Neshama. So Hashem weakened the body. Now we walk around. We never feel good. Why not? It's a taiva. It's a taiva. Why is it? The guf is not so strong. The Neshama is able to be more dominant. You say, I don't understand. If Adam is the greatest of all creations, then why is the lion 1,000 times stronger than a man? It's a taiva. Hashem weakened the body. That means the Neshama could exercise more dominion. It's a very interesting idea. He says, he says, now this is indicated by the lightness of the clouds. Okay, I want to share with you two more ideas about the rainbow. The Malbim writes in a number of places. One in the Torah. The Torah is a footnote on his commentary on Chumash. He writes this in his commentary on Yechezkel as well, like this. He says, The pasuk says in Yechezkel, "Kamare hakeshesh asher yiyah ba'anan b'yom hageshem kein mare hanoi gasavet." Somehow the rainbow is a semblance of Hashem. How is that? Somehow the rainbow is a way that we could relate to Hashem. Says the Malbim, Rebbeinu Shalom's light is pure light. If it travels through Ruchnias, it will remain pure light. If it shines on something which is purely Gashmias, it cannot reflect. The only way that we could have any understanding of Hashem is if His light shines on something which is somewhat physical but has a spiritual element. If it shines on our nefesh. When a person's nefesh is the way it should be, on the highest level, the nefesh is connected to the guf, but the nefesh is also spiritual. Then the light of the Rebbeinu Shalom refracts and breaks down into 7 parts. The 7 parts are the 7 spheros. Right? There's an idea that Hashem, there's 7 spheros, which was always a very controversial idea. What do you mean 7 spheros? The Rebbeinu Shalom is Hashem Echad. The answer is, it's not. We're not saying Hashem has different parts. His aura is one. Hashem Echad. It's just that if we relate to Hashem properly, the way Hashem's light reflects on our nefesh, the light is then broken down through our nefesh into 7 different modes, 7 different spheros. It's not that there are really 7 spheros. That's how we see it. The same way when light shines on a prism, the prism breaks down the light into 7 different colors. It's not that the light actually has 7 colors. Just that's what the prism does to the light. In that way, the rainbow represents Hashem. The same way Hashem is reflected on a human being's nefesh. Now, not necessarily on our nefesh, but a Navi. When a Navi would see Nevuah, it was because his nefesh was on such a high level, his nefesh was able to refract the light of Hashem. That is represented by the rainbow, which is refracted through a prism. Says the Malbim, Hashem was telling the people, I'm giving you my promise, I won't destroy the world. You know what why? You know what my promise is? The same way the rainbow is now able to be refracted through clouds, which are not as physical as before, so too your nefesh is a little bit more dominant than before. And now your nefesh will be able to refract my light, and you'll have a stronger connection to me and a stronger understanding to me. So the rainbow really represents man's ability to relate to the divine light. Okay? One more idea and we'll close with this. Says Rav Meir Shapiro, Hagoyin Rav Meir Shapiro, but also the Lublin, the Lubliner Rav, the great Baal Darshan. He said, what does the rainbow got to do with anything? Daf Yomi, Nazir. What daf? Right? So the Lubliner Rav said like this. What's the rainbow? The rainbow is the message to Noach. Noach thought, Ki hishchas kol basar. Mankind had plummeted, had descended to the point of no return. Noach didn't even bother davening for them. Noach felt there was no hope. Noach felt that things had darkened and blackened to the point that they've fallen to the point of no return. Says Rebbeinu Shalom, you're making a mistake. Don't you know that even in the darkest storm, in the blackest storm, when there's one little glimmer of light, that little glimmer of light could shine on the darkness and bring out of the darkness the most beautiful colors. Noach, if you would have reprimanded the people properly, if you would have taught them, if you would have davened for them, then ma'at min ha'or, doicha harbe min ha'choshech, you would have been able to shine on the darkness of the generation, and you would have been able to bring out great light. And that's my promise, that the world will never be destroyed again. My promise is, there will always be in every generation the sunshine, the leader, the manhig, who even in a generation of complete darkness will shine forth and bring out whatever latent colors and godless and greatness that exists in mankind. And that was the lesson to Noach. Noach, you made a big mistake. You thought it was hopeless. You thought it was black and dark. Rebbeinu Shalom says, no. All you need is a little sunshine, and it will be able to bring out of the greatest storm the most beautiful colors of the rainbow. Rabbi, have a great day.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.